Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the May 25th Diversion Authority Finance Committee meeting. Could call the meeting to order, and I would call on Don for a roll, please.
Mayor Dardis.
Here.
Dr. Mahoney.
Here.
Mr. Peterson.
I am here.
Mr. Jacobson.
Here.
Ms. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Redlinger.
Here.
Mr. Pepcorn.
Here.
Mayor Carlson.
Here.
Mr. Reeds.
Here.
Ms. Madriga.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you, Don. Next order of business to approve the minutes of the April 27, 2022 Finance Committee meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there a second, please?
Peterson second.
Thank you. Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the April 27. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Third item on the agenda is the approval of the order of the agenda.
So moved, Mahoney.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there a second, please?
Peterson second.
Thank you, Commissioner. Been moved and seconded to approve the order of the agenda as presented. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Item 4 on the agenda is the approval of the bills. We'll call on Mike Redlinger this afternoon for that report.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. The bills are listed in the packet this afternoon. We'll just make a couple of notes here for you. This will be a report provided by our new finance director here for the city of Fargo. She wasn't able to join us here today, but these are the pretty standard bills that you're accustomed to seeing, both for the legal as well as the last one, which was just for the authority office. That was just a resolution for some other expenses or an authorization for additional expenses for the office. But just standard bills here. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to pull any out for additional detail and backup.
Thank you, Mr. Redlinger. Any questions? This is an actionable item.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mayor Mahoney. Is there a second, please?
Second Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor. Been moved and seconded to approve the bill's presentation by Mr. Mike Redlinger. Don, would you please call a roll on this?
Mayor Dardis.
Yes?
Dr. Mahoney.
Aye.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger.
Yes.
Mr. Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mayor Carlson.
Yes.
Mr. Reeds.
Yes.
Ms. Madriga.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Don. Item number 5 is the finance report. Again, we will rely on Mr. Mike Redlinger for that report.
Thank you. And in your packet is our standard report. I'm happy to take any questions here, but this is the standard format that you're accustomed to seeing on a monthly basis. And we didn't have any, in particular, any notes that were made this month, but if others have any questions, I'm happy to take them back to the finance staffs. Certainly defer to others in the committee if they have anything to add here, but we just ask for approval on the finance report as well.
Thank you, Mr. Redlinger. Are there any questions of Mr. Redlinger? If not, this is an actionable item that can be conducted with a voice call. All those in favor of the report, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6, Executive Director Financial Report. At this time, we call on Mr. Martin Nicholson, Deputy Director, to help us with that one.
Thank you, Chairman Dardis, members of the committee. I will do my best to fill the shoes of Mr. Paulson. You have in front of you the annual revenue status for the budget, current month and fiscal year to date. Nothing similar to Mr. Redlinger's report, nothing of note here other than we're kind of into business as usual. Showing the approved budget of $194,000 for the 2022 cash budget, current month of 37 for revenue, and fiscal year to date is $35 million. In terms of the level 1 summary, here's your program budget at level 1. We'll have additional conversation about that in the program rebaseline item. But again, nothing really of note. We are at $805 million roughly for expenditures program to date, and annual budget of 195 annual expenditures year-to-date of $27.89 million. Note that the variances in the year-to-date, primarily in lands, we're still looking to close on a number of lands this year, so we expect that number to more closely manage or approach our annual cash budget later in the year.
Chairman Dardis.
Mayor Mahoney.
Martin, go up to the first thing, the first slide that you had, please. When we have an MOU with Oxbow, isn't that completed? I was under the impression that all 100 lots is sold, so shouldn't that MOU be done?
For the City of Oxbow MOU requirements?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're at, I believe that is showing 0 across the board for
But
that.
doesn't that go away? Because basically there's nothing else to sell, is there?
My understanding is, I'd have to ask if there's anything left on it.
The levy's not complete.
Got it.
We
Thanks.
do have about $21 million worth of construction left to complete the construction.
With that question being asked, I understand that there's going to be an expansion of the original across the road of the highway. Will we have any responsibility with that, with the extension of the protection?
No, it's still the same, Dyke.
Okay,
It's just a question of how much they can fit in that slot.
Right.
very good. Anything else for Mr. Nicholson?
We do have level 2 in your slide deck. Again, usually don't spend much time on this. Happy to answer questions if there's any detailed questions on those slides.
Okay. Any additional questions? Then we'd ask Mr. Nicholson to please move forward on the board approval contract actions.
Chairman Dardis, members of the committee, there's one contracting action in front of you today, and that is for cleaning services for the Diversion Authority office portion of the Amber Valley offices where the Diversion Authority, Jacobs, and our partner, Red River Valley Alliance, are co-located. Ambassador, Inc. is the cleaning firm that is cleaning the rest of the office. And so this is a contract directly with the authority to clean our portion of the building for $45,100, and it's presented for your consideration.
Questions?
Martin, don't you usually show the gain that you get because now you pay no rent? Don't you get some of that gain? So this really doesn't cost us anything, is that correct?
So the cleaning services don't fall in that free category, unfortunately. The RLDA wanted to run that through our direct payment versus running that through their bid. We did not, we set it up this way such that we would pay direct.
Chairman Dardis?
Please.
Just one quick question. How long is the contract for? Is this for a one-year cleaning service contract? From, what's the month today?
This is from May 22 to May of 23, yes.
Additional questions? This is an actionable item. Don, would you please call a roll? Fine. May I please have a motion to approve this contracting action? Thank you, Commissioner Peterson. Is there a second, please?
Second, Jacobson.
Thank you, Dan. Been moved and seconded to approve the contracting actions of $45,100 from May of 2022 to 2023. Don, would you please call a roll?
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney.
Aye.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Wendlinger.
Yes.
Mr. Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mayor Carlson.
Yes.
Mr. Reeds.
Yes.
Ms. Madriga.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Thank you, Don. Next order of business is the Deed Diversion Authority Board approval of 2022 cash budget changes. Again, Mr. Nicholson.
Chairman Jardis, member of the committee, there are one budget change request involving 3 line items. These are to, within the 2022 cash budget, transfer money from a BNSF line item, which is $13,250,000, to two utility relocations along the channel for New Star and Magellan. Those costs came in a little higher than our 2022 cash budget allowed, but the BNSF costs will not be incurred this year, likely due to the construction taking place in '23 instead of '22. So these are all included in the budget refresh that we're going to talk about a little later. So this is not a program budget issue, it's a cash flow change where we're just adjusting the line items in the 2022 cash budget to conform to the costs as received for both New Star and Magellan.
Thank you, sir. Any questions?
Move to approve.
Is there a second, please?
Second, Carlson.
Mayor Moore. Been moved and second to approve the 2022 cash budget changes as presented by Mr. Nicholson. Is there any further discussion? None? Don, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Dardis.
Yes?
Dr. Mahoney.
Aye.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger.
Yes.
Mr. Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mayor Carlson.
Yes.
Mr. Reeds.
Yes.
Ms. Madriga.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Thank you, Don. Item number 8, under other business, is a DA board approval, MOUs, and agreement actions. Mr. Shockley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Finance Committee. We have 3 MOUs for the board to consider recommendations regarding. The first is an MOU between the Buffalo Red River Watershed District and the Diversion Authority. You may recall that in the settlement agreement that we reached with the upstream and Buffalo Red, we agreed at that time that we would enter into an MOU to construct mitigation projects located in Wolverton and then also within the city of Georgetown. And the intent was that Buffalo Red would undertake the construction and the authority would pay the cost of it. So Buffalo Red would be responsible for land acquisition, for designing the project, for fielding the calls from property owners and residents. We reached agreement with the Buffalo Red Watershed District regarding these 2 projects in the MOU, and that's before you for approval. Briefly, the Wolverton project includes putting a levee around the city to mitigate the impacts of the project. This will relieve some of our requirement to purchase flowage easements within that protected area that we would have normally had to have provided before. The second project is for Georgetown. It's a smaller project, but those of you who are familiar with Georgetown, they have existing flood control, but due to Highway 75 constraints, they don't have an up and over. So this project would essentially rebuild the levee, so it's an up and over Highway 75 on both sides of the levee. So Buffalo Red will be undertaking these projects. The MOU has been approved by their board, and so it's before you for approval. If you'd like, Mr. Chair, I can address the other 2 MOUs, or MRAs.
Yes, please.
The second is a MRA with Dakota Carrier Network. This is like the other MRAs with the utilities, in which we agree to the terms and conditions of relocates of utilities that exist in the southern embankment. And then as we need them relocated, we create a task order and then assign them a task order to go ahead and perform the work. Very similar to Red River Rural Telephone Association and the Diversion Authority, that we will pay for the cost of the utility relocates in the southern embankment. As we need, we'll create a task order with them and move forward. So pretty straightforward for the utilities and the southern embankment. We're starting to get to the near end of all of the utility MRAs, so we're feeling pretty good.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Mr. Shockley? He has outlined 3. If you'd like to deal with them one at a time or all 3 at once.
Move to approve all 3.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, it's been moved and seconded to approve the board of MOUs and agreement actions items 1, 2, and 3. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Don, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Dardis.
Yes?
Dr. Mahoney.
Aye.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger.
Yes.
Mr. Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mayor Carlson.
Yes.
Mr. Reeds.
Yes.
Ms. Madriga.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Thank you, Don. Next order of business is a recommendation for the disposal of organic farmlands. Call on Jody Smith.
So good afternoon. In your packet, you'll see a memo that outlines the recommendation for the disposal of organic farmlands. On April 28th of 2022, the MCC JPA unanimously approved a recommendation from the Metro Flood Diversion Authority, Joel Paulson, regarding the disposal of MCC JPA owned organic farmland. A copy of that letter is attached to your packet. The recommended process for disposal of these owned organic farmlands would deviate from our asset lands policy minorly. The first step in the process would be to establish market value, which has already been completed in November of 2021, and it was approved by the MCC JPA. The second step would then be to identify organic farm landowners and producers who are impacted by the comprehensive project and offer the organic farmland to the impacted organic farmland owners and producers in exchange for necessary land rights. This has been partially completed. We have identified those organic farmland owners. We just haven't made the offer pending the board's approval tomorrow. Then we would, if the impacted farmland owners were not interested in those parcels, we would offer it potentially in a land exchange for those landowners who are impacted by the southern embankment and the associated infrastructure. Again, if they're not interested, it would then enter kind of into our excess land policy, where it then would be submitted for public auction. Really, our recommendation is to authorize the MCC JPA to dispose of the organic farmland following the steps in the attached recommended letter. In your packet, there's also a map that outlines where those organic farmlands are located. And I'm open to any questions if you have any.
Any questions, Mrs. Smith?
Chairman,
Mayor Mahoney?
when you're defining landowners, if I had a business in Fargo, had land, could I buy that organic land?
If you were in the, say that again, if you are a business
I live
in
in Fargo, I have business, or I live in West Fargo, I have a business, I have to be a big developer, and I choose to buy the land for whatever reason. Do I have that same option because I'm impacted by the southern embankment and I'm living in the city?
If you have land that would be impacted by the southern embankment, you would be within the third step. So we want to leave it open for those land exchanges, really to relocate. A lot of it is being able to relocate some of the farmsteads that are down there. That's one of our challenges. Again,
So I'd be disqualified, right?
you would be disqualified. You
But
wouldn't
if I
kind of
had a
step those.
farmstead or farmland that was southern embankment, then I could qualify.
That's correct. And so really the goal is to kind of leave this opportunity open again. We do have some farmsteads that we're working through some challenges of limited land for them to relocate to. And so our goal in these land exchanges is to mitigate any eminent domain. So the various boards would have to enter into eminent domain by offering these for an exchange. So. And then after that, it would go into a public auction, at which point, if you're living in Fargo and were interested, you'd have equal rights to anybody else to come into that public auction. And bid
Well, I'm
on
just
it.
recalling when some of the land was bought outside of Oxbow, it was by people in town that bought it for development purposes. I'm just trying to make sure the organic farmland would be handled in a way that
Correct.
locals could get it. Yep,
Yeah.
thank you.
Mayor Carlson?
Thank you, Chair Dardis. Jody, so does this eliminate the possibility of because I know there was at one point discussion of the organic land would need to be exchanged for another organic land, that kind of equal exchange? So this is now kind of open to everybody. You wouldn't necessarily be doing swaps with organic?
Mayor Carlson and members of the committee, it would first go to the organic farmland owners, and hopefully it'd be pretty close to an acre for acre. I'm not going to guarantee that's how every every negotiation would end up, but that's certainly something that we do evaluate so that the current organic farmland owners have the ability to produce equal amounts with the exchange that would occur. If that does not go through, if negotiations are not successful, then it would be opened up for other land exchange opportunities for those farmstead owners who are impacted then by the Southern Embankment. At that point, if that is not successful or nobody's interested in it, then it would go up for public auction at that point. And again, once it goes into public auction, anybody can kind of step into the room and place a bid on it. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Any additional questions? Commissioner Peterson?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Can you touch on who has the first rights to the property, meaning we have a number of people that are impacted, who gets to pick land first? I think you have a strategy for that, but could you share that with us, please?
Yes, so thank you for the question. So we have identified just 4 organic farmland owners. One of them, the MCC JPA, has already orchestrated a negotiation with, and so we're down to 3 organic farmland owners. Then what we'll do is go out and propose this opportunity to them, and essentially it will be on a first come, first serve. It's trying to incentivize them to sit down with us and with their land agents really and negotiate a settlement with us. And so our hope is that we can come to a conclusion with this. And it does seem that thus far, based off our land agents' feedback, they are open to this. So,
Additional questions? Again, this is an actionable item. I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to approve, Carlson.
Is there a second?
Peterson, second.
Been moved and second to approve the recommendation for the disposal of organic farmlands as presented by Mrs. Smith. Is there any discussion? Any additional discussion? Don, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Darditz.
Yes?
Dr. Mahoney.
Aye.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger.
Yes.
Mr. Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mayor Carlson.
Yes.
Mr. Reeds.
Yes.
Ms. Madriga.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Thank you, Don. Next order of business is the program budget and financial plan, the rebaseline. Mr. Nicholson.
Chairman Dardis, members of the committee, this is the report out for what we've been talking about doing for a number of months since we've received the P3 bid and gotten those costs locked in. The Jacobs team has spent quite a bit of time looking at the project cost estimate and updating it to 2022 dollars, and today we've got the results of that rebaselining effort. I thought it would be good to start with a basic review of how the process works. And so this is a slide that I pulled from a presentation given back, I believe it's in 2015 or 2016, for those that haven't had the benefit of seeing kind of what happens behind the scenes when we put together a program budget and what feeds into the financial plan. So what we have revisited and updated are the cost and risk inputs that go into the financial plan, and those involve around the big buckets of land, construction costs, mitigation costs, utility relocations, all of our non-construction costs, including legal costs for eminent domain, et cetera, and our contingency amounts. Those are then put into a financial model that escalates those costs over time. So it produces year of expenditure dollars escalated. Our model escalates at 3% per year. So costs out in the future are obviously higher than what they are in current dollars. It applies the interest rates that have been negotiated to finance both short-term and long-term debt, accounts for all the revenue sources, which are now locked in with respect to all the grant money and your sales tax revenues, which are received on an annual basis, and all of the financing costs, both short-term and long-term. So the output of that is really in 2 categories. If you go to the next slide, the first is, what does it take to get us through construction, which is really 2027, 2028. And so this is the level one budget, program budget that you see and track on the board dashboard and get a report on every month. The changes in red are some minor bucket and name changes to more accurately reflect what is being tracked in each one of those categories. Really nothing more than name changes for the red items. You'll notice a number of line items that are zeroed out, designated P3 bridges, designated options, and designated 37-foot river stage. You will recall the last time we baselined the program was just after the legislative session, where in North Dakota, we had asked for $870 million, we came out with $750 million. And so in order to move the program forward, we had to develop a plan that we could still build the project. And really those designated projects became at risk. If we never achieved the funding, those programs, or excuse me, that part of the program wouldn't be constructed. So if you go to today, so that's the 2019 financial plan column in column A. And the 2.515 or 2.515 billion are essentially the checks that the authority has to write in order to get through construction. That includes financing costs, paying back short-term loans, et cetera. Column B is the current 2022 financial plan, and the next column is the delta between column B and column A. So you can see how those numbers have changed between 2019 and today. So happy to go through questions on any one of those items, but I thought I would make some comments on some of the larger ones. So the big variances are in the milestone payments to the developer. There's about $100 million difference in what we budgeted or planned for, estimated in 2019, and what the actual bid came in. That might seem like a lot of money, but you have to account for the annual availability payments and basically the 30-year loan that the developer is giving you and those paybacks. So in our estimate, we had lower upfront cash payments, a little higher annual payment. They came in with a plan that had a little higher cash payment and lower annual payments. And so it's not a $100 million difference in the price. It's in the way that P3 was priced in through the procurement. The other big numbers are obviously lands. We're all well aware that land prices have spiked some. We have some recent Supreme Court decision on eminent domain. We have appraisals with respect to flowage easements, and all of that has been updated and put into the cost estimate, which produced $155 million worth of increase for lands and impacted property mitigation. The other, there's a $63 million for non-construction costs. That again is reflecting the higher potential for eminent domain. So those are basically an allowance for legal costs to take us through that process for all of the flowage easements and the rest of the land acquisition. The other large item is third-party MOU and mitigation. The settlement agreement costs that really enabled the program to move forward are captured there, as well as all of the costs for MOUs that have been signed with various townships and other entities are all reflected in that number. Excuse me. There's a plus minus down at the bottom. There was a general line item for short-term loan payments, and now we have a Wells Fargo loan that will be repaid, and temporary refunding improvement bonds that will be repaid at the end of construction. So those total up about $375 million. You may say, gee, that's a big number. It is a large number, but in the context of affordability, it has little impact on the ability for the authority to service the costs on this sheet. And then if you go to the next slide, thank you. So this is a slide that depicts long-term debt. So it starts at the end of construction, and this is the long-term payment obligations that for both the P3 in terms of the availability payment plus all of the debt service on the money that is borrowed for construction. The solid black line is a sales tax growth rate of about 1.5%. So that is the base sales tax growth rate in the financial plan, and that is set very conservatively because for partial reasons, the financial community will not loan on a very aggressive sales tax assumption. In fact, they'd prefer you not escalate it at all in order to borrow money. So the dashed line is what I would call the break-even sales tax growth assumption. That is at 2.9%. And for comparison, in 2019, that number was around 2.5%. So what it says, the affordability of the program remains about the same as it was in 2019, even though we had some cost growth. And why is that? You've all heard of the very good work of Mr. Shockley landing the WIFIA loan at very attractive interest rates, which help significantly this debt load and debt service that you see on the graph. You have had some sales tax growth between 2019 and now, which is reflected in the starting number. So I think the picture still looks very affordable with respect to the overall program and both the construction costs and the debt service. So I'll just close with a few comments and observations on the last slide. As I said, the costs through construction completion remain within the short-term financing ability, and that's really the financial strength of the authority to borrow the money short-term at higher interest rates to get the construction done. And then your long-term debt service and P3 payments remain within your affordability limits. We do have contingency remaining to be financed, and it remains about the same as before, around $160 million. And all long-term debt and payments are covered if sales tax receipts grow at about that 2.9%. I'll just make one other comment, and that is that there are additional monies that sometimes are discussed for both the city of Fargo and the city of Moorhead that have been made outside the comprehensive project. So there's additional projects to fight floods that are not included in these numbers. And that's because they're not an obligation of this financial plan and the Flood Diversion Authority. So I'm happy to take any questions. I believe, Chairman Dardis, this is, the request is to have a recommendation to begin to track at the board level against this new program baseline and new program baseline costs.
Starting in June.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner.
So, Mr. Chair, one of the questions, Martin, so you showed the sales tax. So one of our sales taxes ends in 2028. So is that included in there, the continuation of that, or how is that figured?
I do not believe that is counted in the financial plan. I'd have to check with Mr. Shockley.
Mr. Shockley is stepping to the microphone.
Martin is correct. That is not currently included in the finance plan. If that is renewed, it would help to pay down the project faster.
Right.
Great question.
Mr. Chair.
Please. Commissioner Peterson.
During one of our, I think it was a lunch and learn or something, we had that excess revenue, that capital discussed. Martin, can you, I don't know how to ask this question so everyone listening understands, but as we bring in additional revenue, so our program's right now at 2.9 to break even, but we know we're getting at 10, so that remaining 7%, if we utilize that 7% to pay the debt down, we had a significant number reduction in terms of principal over time. Is that acknowledged in here somehow? I'm trying, you understand the question I'm asking? So right
Not
now,
yet.
the program, our graphs show a wonderful line at
Yes.
0.9%, and then we show, knowing full well that we're receiving things like 10%.
Okay.
Where does the additional 7% go?
Martin, I can answer that if you'd like.
Please, Mr. Shockley.
So a great question, Commissioner Steen. The additional sales tax, so in the model, what happens is additional sales tax first goes to pay any maintenance and operation. And then if we have a surplus every year, the diversion authority through the finance board has the option to call additional principal on the bonds. And so that would be up to a future board that if you wanted to call a couple $1 million every year of extra principal, it would just result in paying off the project faster.
Mr. Chairman, if I can continue?
Please.
That's actually one of the things I discussed, and when we were working on this years ago, one of the very first things when the county commission was being briefed was me saying that elections in the future matter, because those dollars can be committed elsewhere if we so chose, but if we put the right people in office, we can pay the debt down. I'm not a real big debt guy, whether it's personal, business, or public, so having that additional capital to help pay this debt down would substantively impact, and I think this graph would show a shocking or marked improvement if we were to remain even at 5%, never mind the 10. And with inflation going up, we are the unfortunate beneficiaries of inflating prices, meaning inflating sales tax. So over time, we'll have all this additional capital to pay this down. I think, again, elections matter, and putting the right people in the right spots who are well aware of what this body has done in the past and its intents may serve the public well. Thank you.
And just to add on to that, you can see that in the graph because that does not assume any prepayments of principal. That's why you have the big white space sitting out there. We didn't assume that, we didn't make that assumption that the future boards would pay that off. We just said this is if everything stayed static as it is.
Additional questions? There is a notation too that I think is warrant to be mentioned is that with all the calculations that was done by previous diversion authority boards, the conservative approach that they took for growth as well as for revenues coming in. But there has something that transpired in the interim, and that is internet sales and tax collection on internet sales in North Dakota. And of course, back when the original planning would have been done, that wouldn't have not been into consideration, because I think if you would check with any city entity or the county for the cardboard that's coming through our recycling programs, it's amazing. And of course, the taxes collection where the products are delivered. So when our public during the COVID pandemic was out there purchasing and purchasing and purchasing on the internet, it had a significant as Commissioner Peterson is outlining, growth in our sales tax revenues. So that's a very positive thing. Good conservative numbers to begin with, and then that additional revenue coming in was substantial. Anything, Mr. Martinson?
Just one more closing comment, and that is that while the affordability still looks good, we are just beginning with respect to the P3 contract, which has a net present value of about $1.4 billion. I mean, it is a large contract. And I would just say that the financial position the authority's in, as you point out, Chairman Dardis, is a function of the due diligence and approach the board has taken. That due diligence needs to remain on scope control and cost control as you move forward to ensure that this continues to look as a good picture.
One of the things that I couldn't be more pleased about is in the last 2 to 3 years, when we've asked for different benchmarks and the like, the response that the financial folks within our organization, Joel, Martin, obviously Mr. Shockley, Peggy, everybody that's involved, have given us great dashboards in order to work with. One of the things that Commissioner Steen and I have been pushing for and asking their consideration in was to actually have the benchmark set at today's market. And I know that there's been projects done in America where they might have a forecast of 10 years and they don't touch them, you know, if that's what it is. But one of the things we wanted to do, because one of the questions that continue to come up by members of the Finance Committee is that how are we tracking these increases? And as we have all witnessed within the last 2 years, the things that we have for litigation and land acquisitions continue to rise. And we wanted to make sure that all of the board authority members had working understanding and visual representation in front of them, that they understand the effects that it's having, you know, on the program plan. And so, again, to those that have been involved in giving us these additional tools, if you will, I think it really speaks volumes, because the thing that we all have to be concerned about is the affordability of the project. And with all the dynamics that's going on in the world today, we're still affordable, and that's the key. And so we wanted that tracked. And to all those on staff that have done that, I'm very grateful. Nice job.
Don, could the record reflect that Bernie Dardis is optimistic now on our financial plan? Thank you.
But we're still going to guard contingency like it's our own. Right? Thank you, Martin, for nodding your head to that. Yeah. Good.
Yes, sir, for the record.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Any other additional questions? This is just moving this forward to the board, and again, it would be from June to June. So this is this really an actionable item? It's for information to pass this on to the full board.
It is for information to pass on for their.
So if you have any additional questions, let's get them in now. Otherwise, we'll take it up again tomorrow. All right? Does any member from the Finance Committee have anything additional that they'd like to bring forward at this time?
Move to adjourn.
Does staff have anything that they'd like to bring forward at this time that's not on the agenda? If not, thank you, Mayor Mahoney. We have a motion for adjourn. We stand adjourned.